So basically, when I hear the word diversity, the first thing that comes to mind is richness. Because when I think about all those different perspectives coming together, it's a beautiful collage of every different trait that surrounds us. So if we're talking about different ethnicities, if we're talking about different social backgrounds, possibly I have this experience of diversity because I've been teaching for quite a number of years in a mixed ability background. And this has proved to be like the best experience ever because I got to create activities and not just create, I would say co create with my students because I used to ask them about their backgrounds and we would come up with different ideas. So that was like a representation of their life. And that also helped the development of language, which is the subject that I used to teach. And also the fact that they used to identify with whatever narrative they were portraying. So diversity in this sense has this beautiful meaning for me. So basically, the context is obviously mostly school. At first, I would say school, because obviously that is the place where I started my work experience. And I used to teach in this particular school for around 11 years. And children came from different abilities, from different social backgrounds. But then I think what helped me see diversity more and the richness behind it all is when I had the opportunity to represent Malta in Poland. And this was a course organized by the Council of Europe back then. And it was a course on Holocaust studies, and it was held in Auschwitz. And there, obviously, there were representatives from many different countries. And there I could see not just the perspective of the war, of the Second World War, from what we had heard and what I had read about the local literature about that. Obviously, I had read other stuff which was not local, but hearing it from, for example, a survivor of an Auschwitz camp, you know. So it wasn't just that, it was also the networking experiences, like for example when it was time to have dinner, different people, different food traditions. And again, once again, it is a richness because you see different things, you learn different traits. And of course, the adventurous part of me would always ask questions because there was something that I wanted to learn more about. So if I say and if I think about the context of practice, I would not limit it to the school. I would basically not limit it to anything but life out there throughout the years. Then obviously I had more friends also, and I think I managed to broaden also my circle of friends. And nowadays I would say I have different friends coming from different countries. Malta, I think, is the best place for that because you get to meet people from all ethnicities. And besides food, which is usually the first topic that unites everyone, there's a lot more, you know. And it's not just food or music or traditions, it's much more. It's like, for example, when we discuss topics like diversity, tolerance, peace in the world, and you automatically meet other people and you share readings. And it's basically a fantastic exchange. Now, this is a beautiful question because coming from a different background, in the sense that the school where my first experience, um, where I had my first experience, inclusion was meant in terms of preparing, adapting the usual mainstream curriculum even to other children. And that is what I started off with. So other colleagues, other experienced people would tell me and share this. And along the years, I've changed my mind about this word a lot of times because inclusion is, according to me, creating spaces beyond the visible. So we have this tendency of thinking about inclusion in terms of, yes, we're going to add a ramp for wheelchairs, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And there's this beautiful word, like behind the disability, and in the word disability, there is ability. So inclusion for me is actually finding the key for other people to show their abilities, because everyone has abilities, you know? So basically, when I say creating spaces beyond the visible, as a teacher and as a practitioner, it's the way we ask questions. It's the way we prepare students for real life debate, and proving and promoting that real space. Which means if I am including someone, it's just not making space for that person, but starting from his or her viewpoint. And also, obviously, inclusion is addressing the fact that not everyone is coming from the same background. So addressing those needs is not discriminating, but actually putting people on an equal level at par to start. So basically, if I had to think about how to best achieve inclusion, I would say that at the basis of everything, there needs to be respect. Now, respect is gained over some time, and also it depends how you create that environment, that ambience, whether it's within a class, whether it's within the working space. And also, as a starting point for it to happen, there is always, for at least for me, the need to understand where people are coming from and what they believe in. Because when we actually see where people are coming from and what they believe in, then we can find this common goal and work towards a common goal. And also, along the years, I am a lover of Paulo Freire and his work. And basically, in one of his list of traits, the first one is humility. So addressing any situation with humility, and also being a very good listener to the people around you, to be able to adapt. So for inclusion to happen for real, I would say that the best strategy is to know the people around the table, to work around a common goal, and to be very wise when preparing questions. I have observed different schools, and I would say that every school tackles this in a different way. But at the basis of everything, the students need to feel safe to be able to portray their voice. So whether they do it in a real safe space in terms of speaking up during assembly, during a talk, during a forum, throughout a question box method, um, for that to be really, really effective, there needs to be someone to chair this and to moderate this kind of talk, language, forum, call it whatever you want. So, as I said before, the basis should be the creation of that space, the allowance of that space, the need for that space. Because if you're catering for a group of people, you need to be listening to that group of people. I might say to myself, listen, but I've been a teacher for 10 years now, for 20 years. I know it all. We never know it all because our audience keeps changing. So we need to adapt accordingly. So for us to gather the best out of participation, we need to create and allow that safe space in any shape or form, which obviously does not harm anybody in the group. And more than that, more than the safe space, it's the creation of the actual questions. So I find that following Bloom's taxonomy and the way the questions are sort of staggered, but in a very intelligent way, you are not only recalling knowledge or maybe asking questions haphazardly, but you're actually preparing for a goal, and you're allowing for children or any other participant for that sake to be a critical thinker. So anyone who's a critical thinker will not take things personal, will distance himself from the person, but will be very passionate about the argument. And that is how we need to raise our children, to be passionate about whatever they're doing. So if you're passionate and you feel safe, your voice is going to be heard. And obviously, for it to be effective, things need to be done. So we can speak for hours and hours, but we need to have a way forward. And the process needs to be transparent for the children to actually see that when they're talking, it's not falling on deaf ears, but something is actually happening. Okay, so basically, there's a lot to tell over here, but I'm going to choose 2 episodes. So a couple of years ago, I was facilitating a group, and the group sort of formed mini groups within the big group, which is very common, okay? And this intensified when they started talking about the us and them, us and them. So I said to myself, okay, here I have to go back to the drawing board and perhaps do different icebreakers, you know? And one of the icebreakers that I had researched and actually practiced was basically to collect all the surnames of the participants in that group. And we had this etymology book, like where surnames come from. And I put a map of the world on the wall, and everybody had to pick up a surname from one person in the group, you know, and they would find the etymology of that surname, and then obviously pin the first string onto Malta, which is where we are, and then drag the string to the country of origin of that surname. And as you probably can imagine, at the end of the exercise, we've had lots of strings going to North Africa, Italy, England, and also a lot more, you know, quite different ones. And the idea behind it was more than the discussion that we had. Where are we coming from? What is uniting us? You know, we're talking about the us and them, and here we are. We're all citizens of the world, you know. And this was the first activity, because obviously this took a little while to sort of create what you call, I would say, a unified front. Okay, we had to work on a project, and I could see that there were 2 dominant groups. Okay, and they had 2 different ideas. So what I did was then distribute the members differently, and I created a team building activity using an ASA exercise. So they had like 20 items which they could take up to the moon, but in terms of weight, they were limited, so they had to make a choice. So this kind of exercise and debate, why I want to take matches, but I cannot afford to take the rope, was automatically exposing my ideas about that object and what it meant to me. And obviously we had different perspectives. And that was a good exercise on its own, which then led to an actual building of a raft. And obviously they had to agree on certain parameters, and they had a time limit. At the end of this whole exercise, we did another exercise, which is a reflective exercise, which I like to use a lot. It's called PQPA, and this is praise. So I am listening to your project. So the first thing that I'm going to do in terms of critical feedback, first I'm going to praise. So I'm going to say talk about all the things that struck me in your project. Then second Q is question. I will ask you questions. Then I will polish, suggest any things that would need to be tweaked. And then 4 is is adapt. So what I learned through you. If you had an idea that inspired me to do something else. So, and this is a really good exercise, even when I work with teachers, because it's very difficult to give feedback, especially when you've been very passionate about a project. So in this systematic way, everyone knows that they're getting feedback on these 4 parameters. And since parameters are very, very clear, everyone is expecting that kind of feedback and is actually yearning for that feedback. So I think I would say that is the best practice that I've experienced.